I shall never forget. It's the day where life for Jewish people in Germany was completely turned upside down. It was an ordinary day. I was an apprentice at an export company in Hamburg, Germany. I did my usual work, assisting some of the other employees with Spanish and English correspondence and file their paperwork. And I had a co-worker, a very nice young man, who came to work in Hitler Youth uniform, and my boss was kind of unhappy about it. But believe it or not, we were very good friends. The office closed about 5:15, and we went downstairs, got on our bikes, and we headed across the center of downtown Hamburg. We immediately realized there was something going on that was very different from previous afternoons. We saw mobs of dirty-looking people with sledgehammers and rocks destroying display windows of nearby retail stores belonging to Jewish merchants. My Nazi friend in his Nazi uniform broke out in tears. He couldn't believe that a thing like this could happen in beautiful Germany. We worked our way through the crowd, and he lived near where I was living, on the other side of one of the lakes in Hamburg. And when I came home to my place where I lived, I had a very nice landlady. She said, I just heard on the radio what was going on. It may not be safe for you to stay here tonight. She was a good Christian woman, and she said, maybe you ought to join your friends. They were from, I forgot.
Romania.
From another country.
Romania.
Huh?
Romania.
Romania. They were from Romania, right? And surely they're not going to disturb Romanian citizens, because Romania happened to be an ally of Nazi Germany. It was a few minutes later, the telephone rang, and they called. And they said, pack up your stuff and move in with us. You may not be safe where you stay. And I hesitated for a moment, but my landlady said, you better do as they say. And so I moved over there, and they had a daughter who was my girlfriend, and a son, and the son had 2 beds in his bedroom, and I spent the night there. So that was the beginning. I really didn't know what was going on, but the next morning it became very clear to me. Also on the way home from work the night before, we saw them setting a synagogue afire, and fire department people were standing by and were prevented by stormtroopers and SS men from doing anything about the fire. During that night, they burned down the majority of all the synagogues in Germany and Austria, and also they arrested the majority of the Jewish men later on. But of course I didn't know that during that night, But the next morning, my mother called me, and we said they arrested your father and took him to the Buchenwald concentration camp. He was arrested by a friendly German policeman who came around 10:30, 11 o'clock at night, just when my dad was about to retire and go to bed. And he couldn't have been friendlier, and told my parents, I have orders to take your husband down to the police station. But take your time, put on some warm dressing, some warm clothes, and have something to eat. And here's this incredible picture of the German policeman sitting in my parents' kitchen having an early breakfast before midnight. He took my father to the police station, nearby police station, and there were several other German Jewish men already sitting there, and my father had no idea at the time what was about to happen. And about an hour later, they were turned over to a detachment of stormtroopers who marched them down to the railroad station, to the freight railroad station, put them into freight cars, and took them to the Buchenwald concentration camp. My mother called me the next morning and reported that and begged me to come home. Fortunately, it was just a week or 2 weeks prior to that incident that my parents had applied for immigration to the United States. So with the help of the American consul, we were able to get my dad out of the concentration camp with the understanding that he had to leave, he and his family had to leave Germany within 2 months. And so eventually my dad came home. He looked very, very bad. He had the flu, was sick for about 2 weeks, but eventually recovered. His business had been destroyed. By that time he had sold off several of his small food stores that sold mostly coffee, tea, and various kinds of wine. Things were merchandised a little differently in Germany than they are in the United States. And so there were 2 stores in the city of Frankfurt that had been completely demolished. And in fact, within a day or 2 after I came back to Frankfurt, I was summoned to help clean up the debris. I was forced to do that. After all, it was all my father's fault that the German people became so enraged that they destroyed his store. He slowly recovered. It was a very slow recovery. After all, he was a veteran of the German army during World War I. Germany was his country. He only spoke German. My mother knew some English and some French. He was born on a farm north of Frankfurt, and he only had an 8-year education. But he was a self-educated man. After he left school, he kept reading and doing a little studying on himself, and he was able to hold his own with any number of more educated people. So, fortunately, we got word from the American consul to make ourselves known in Stuttgart, Germany, the first week in January. And so we did, for physical examination and to get our necessary papers to immigrate to the United States legally. And the American consul couldn't have been any friendlier and nicer. He looked at us and he said, "Oh, I can see you're all in perfect health." and that took about 2 minutes. And within half an hour, we got the papers, and we had reservation on a train that left about an hour later or so, and we went to Holland to get out of Germany.